Okay, great.
So
warm applause. Finally, we have a cable connection.
Okay. Really happy to meet you. I'm sorry I can't actually hear you.
You know, Christian, do you have a headset? Because the sound is quite difficult to hear.
Sure. You know, could you maybe, if you hover the mouse over the microphone symbol, you can mute on your end. If you take a look at the hover the mouse over the top area, there's a microphone symbol, and if you press that and it goes red, then I can't hear you, but we should have better sound maybe.
Yeah, right. So now you can't hear me. Yeah, I press it.
Yes, that might actually work better for you. So every time you need to say something to me, stop me or ask a question, then you just need to remember to switch on your microphone. So the sound works better for you now? Okay. So I'm sorry I can't actually see the class, but anyway, greetings from Denmark. And there you are. Wonderful. Wonderful. I should say that I'm very happy to meet you, and I'm very excited to have this class with you. Cross-border teaching, that is something that we really like, and I'm truly looking forward to January to visit Stuttgart and meet you all. If this looks a bit like a home setting, then you're absolutely right. There was too much going on in the office this morning, so it was better for me to do this webinar from home. The reason I mention this is because somewhere around here, there is a rather large dog, and if it starts barking, you will know why. So you have just been warned in advance. Otherwise, my name is Christian Strøbæk, and as your teacher has probably explained to you, I'm a journalist and an assistant professor, and for some years now, I have taught social journalism at the Danish School of Journalism, and also worked with media companies to try and find ways for journalists and media companies to use social media in a sort of professional setting. And some of the things that I'll share with you here today is quite interesting, because in the Danish job market, I don't know quite for sure how it is in Germany, but in the Danish job market, the skills that we are looking at in this webinar today is very, very sought after. And some of our youngsters actually write it on their resume that they are able to, for instance, search and find sources in social media, because many skilled and professional journalists in the Danish job market don't actually know how to do this. So if you listen carefully and you work with these skills, I think it's a fair guess that it will also be something that will be of benefit for you, not only during your studies, but also in the job market. I'm going to cover today two subjects, and one we call mapping. Basically, it's about doing research in social media, finding subjects, filtering the noise in social media, finding audiences, and maybe even, if you're lucky, finding conversations relevant to the stories that you are doing. So that's the first set of skills that I'll be looking at. And for the last half hour of this live webinar, I'll be looking at techniques and methods and tools to monitor social media in a sort of a systematic way. To get us started, I've made a little drawing here. I'll be sharing my screen and sharing some techniques, but to get us started, I've made this drawing here, and as you can see, I'm not the world's best person to draw on a blackboard, and this is my daughter's. I had to steal it from her room, but I think it works. I hope you can see it. I've drawn here two circles, and one is physical space, and the other one is representing digital space. We are, of course, I'm sitting here at my desk in physical space, and we are connecting in the digital space. And as you are well aware of, during the past maybe 20 years or so, there is this layer of digital space around more or less everything related to human life. It's actually difficult for us today to find instances in our life where we are not also able to dive into digital space and either connect to people or search for information. So this is sort of a companion space wherever we go. And today, when I talk about mapping social media and searching social media, we are diving into digital space. And I think it's important just to note that digital space really took off 20 years ago. As you are maybe familiar with the advent of the World Wide Web. This is the inner circle of the digital space. And the World Wide Web was sort of what we call the first epoch, the first period of digital space. And then round about 10 years ago now, actually, but strongest in the past 5-6 years, a new epoch of digital space was started. And this is, of course, social space. And when we in a moment start looking at ways to search and do research in the digital space, I think it's quite interesting to see how different it is to do searches in the social part of the digital space, because it really is something different. Most of us still use social media for private and personal uses, and it's still a minority of people who are actually using social media for professional uses. So not that many people actually are very familiar with the techniques of searching social space. So with that in place, let's dive into it. And I'd like to start by just pointing out that, let me just share my screen with you. I'd like to start by just pointing out that I'll be showing you some tools, and this is maybe specifically for you, Elisabeth, that I've on the actual event page of this webinar, I've just last night put down a link to a document where I have just noted the tools or some of the tools and the recipes that I will be sharing with you during this webinar, just so that you know that you're of course welcome to take notes, but there is also this document that we will share with you with some of the tools. And also another thing, I have pressed record as we started this Google Hangout, so the whole session will also be recorded, so you can revisit the session if there are some parts of it that might seem unclear to you in a couple of weeks' time. But the first social media space that we'll look into is Facebook. And let me just consult my notes here, so I'll do it in the proper order. Yeah. I had let me just share my screen with you first. Here we go. Should be able to see my screen now, I think. Facebook has really been moving along very quickly in the past few weeks when we talk about searching in the social space. You're looking here at my personal Facebook page, and I can't really control what goes on, so let's just keep our fingers crossed that nothing embarrassing happens on my own Facebook page while you're looking at it. You can see some of my friends are sharing stuff here. What I wanted to tell you is that if you have a German language setting on your Facebook page, and I would guess that most of you have, in settings and language, I'll just quickly switch over to, oh, not Estonian, but German. with the German language setting, Facebook is, and also with a Danish language setting, Facebook is rather difficult to search in. Last night, just to search for some German words, I just did a test. I searched maybe for the word Elektroauto. And with a typical search within Facebook, you will get some pages, some preferred pages with the name Elektroauto in them. But the first tip I'll give you is that if you switch over in your language settings, Sprache, Deutsch, to US English, then you will get access to a new form of searching in Facebook. This was introduced very recently. It was introduced the 22nd of October, which is to say just a few weeks ago. Facebook opened up for a new kind of search where if you search for, again, let's take the first word here, Elektroauto. What you will get now is a different kind of result. Facebook is now rolling out a new way of searching in social media, which is actually very powerful. It's not completely working yet, but it's getting there. And it will eventually also be available in Danish menu settings and in German menu settings. But for now, it's only available if you change the Facebook menu language to US English. So if you see my search now, it is sorted into top content. And first I'll get some pages with the name Elektroauto in either the title or the description. And I'll get some public posts. And in a very interesting tab called Latest, I will simply be able to, in real time, look into all public content in the whole of Facebook after the word Elektroauto. And this will be a mixture of media content and just regular people sharing stuff or telling their friends something, but with a public setting. This is very important. With this new type of search in Facebook, you can only see content, obviously, maybe, that is deemed public, but it can be from groups or from pages or from personal profiles or media profiles or content from discussions. So it's a very powerful tool we've gotten here as journalists to be able to search in social media. And I think it's only natural after the terrible events Friday and Saturday in Paris that we maybe use that as an example, because if we search for Paris attacks and maybe even use the hashtag Paris attacks, which is interesting that use of hashtags is actually, oh, sorry, I'm misspelling it. Use of hashtags is actually growing in Facebook, and now with this new search setting, you will probably see that hashtags will grow as well. But searching for Paris attacks in Facebook is very different from searching from the phrase. We can also try just to search for the actual phrase Paris attacks. Like this is very different actually from searching the same thing. If you remember my circles on the blackboard in the World Wide Web. So searching in Facebook will give you some curated content in the top tab here, curated content from journalists within Facebook. And this is something quite new. And you can see the first hit we get here is an introduction to some content here. And then it says here, involved in this story. And Facebook has curated some profiles, the French president, the French armed forces, and a branch of this French armed forces, state government offices, and then we'll get down here to some top posts. And it's quite new that Facebook gives us all this curated content. And top posts, you will now get content on the top posts that the algorithm that Facebook uses to show us content deems interesting, which is to say, this is content that is recent and has been interacted with by users. 117 comments and 645 likes and 65 shares, stuff like that. But what is really interesting is if you again hit the latest tab, and again remember, this is only possible with the US English language setting to do a search like that. And I use the search word Paris attacks, and then diving into the latest tab will give me sort of chronological content, public content from Facebook with the words Paris attacks. And here we are seeing content from private people, and it's in real time, 10 minutes ago, 26 minutes ago. It's not the same as Twitter. We'll look at Twitter in a minute, because Twitter is a more effective real-time engine in the world. But with this latest move where Facebook has made this kind of search available for us on the latest real-time search in Facebook, we will most likely see Facebook also approaching Twitter in real time as a real-time news source. Facebook is, of course, widely used as a real-time news source, but let me just clarify that the reason why, I don't know how many of you are really that much into Twitter, but in case you're wondering, many people use Facebook or go to Facebook for real-time news, but as an effective chronological real-time news delivery machine, Twitter is historically more effective because Twitter gives us content from Twitter without interference of Twitter's algorithm. So for years we have been able to follow just the here and now stream of content on Twitter. And this is something new, only dating back, as I said, the 22nd of October, that Facebook allows us to access content that people all over the world are sharing with a particular word. And you can, of course, search any kind of word in Facebook now with this new setting. So let me just share my screen with you again, because I think it could be interesting for us also to look at just briefly how the same search would look if we look in the sort of the inner layer of the digital space. So just have a look here again, and I'll just open a regular Google search, because this is, of course, our entry gate to the World Wide Web part of the digital space. And if I search the same phrase, Paris attacks, then you'll see a different kind of results. You'll see also some curated content, because for years now, Google has been sort of deciding with itself that it should, if there is a relevant Wikipedia page, then that will be the first hit that we get in a same search that we did a minute ago in social. And then we'll get media content with the words Paris attacks in the headlines. And in a sense, that is very similar to what Facebook gives us under the top tab. But what Google cannot give us is the sort of the look into the real-time sharing from people all over the world discussing this subject. And that's an interesting development that also tells us something about why Google frantically now for years have been trying to create their own social network. Because for Google not to be able to offer Google's customers high value search in the social sphere of the digital space is actually a business problem for Google. And you can see very clearly when you search for various terms, maybe not related to terror events, but just regular topics that you cover in your journalistic work, I would really encourage you to try both kind of searches during your research, so that you get the social research with yourself alongside, because it's very valuable for us as journalists to, one, see what are people talking about around our topic, and two, can we maybe find some sources, some voices with this technique quicker than otherwise. So let's continue looking at Facebook. And again, if you have any questions, just direct your questions to your professor, and you can just interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll just keep on talking. So I'll share my screen again. And I just wanted to share with you that Saturday morning, I received a call from. Maybe I can look at you while I'm telling you this. Saturday morning, I received a call from a rather large Danish media company. I had some weeks ago, I had been giving a lecture and visiting them and discussing some of the opportunities of searching the social web. And they called me Saturday morning. They own newspapers, sort of regional newspapers all over Denmark. And they asked if I could maybe break off breakfast time with the family and help them for a couple of hours. Because what they needed was to be able to find Danish people in Paris, maybe eyewitnessing the events, or if not that, then at least just staying in Paris and being able to tell them something about how the atmosphere of the town was, of the city. And remember that they own maybe 10 or 12 regional newspapers. And what each newspaper was interested in was to be able to find someone from their own town or their own region in Denmark to be able to make a story, an eyewitness story with someone local. So I said yes, and I went to work, and I quickly switched my language setting on Facebook, just as I showed you. And I started searching under the latest tab. And because it's not a sort of a perfect tool, Twitter is actually, I'll show you in a little while, Twitter is actually much more satisfying to search in, because you can filter in many, many more ways than you can in Facebook. So Facebook is rather difficult, but still interesting. So what I had to do, I would say, I had to search for Danish words, because when you search with this new facility in Facebook, if you search for words that are similar usage in German and English, you will not be able to filter the stream to get content from Germans. In your case, you will get a mixture of English and English speaking people from all over the world. So for me, Saturday morning, I had to come up with specific Danish words, like the sentence "I'm safe" in Danish, or "this is terrible" in Danish, or "going back to my hotel room" in Danish. So I searched for all these phrases in Facebook in the latest tab, and I was able to very quickly, combining these phrases with the word Paris, I was able to very quickly find 15 or 20 people distributed in these regional towns in Denmark, and then quickly put them into a Google document that I was able to share with these reporters in the media company. So within an hour or so, they were able to contact people in Paris and write stories and have them on their websites. So they were very happy with it. But still, it's interesting to see that sort of trained journalists who should be actually, and I'm a bit critical here of my colleagues, they should be able to do this by now. So if they can't do it, for sure you must be able to do it. But it worked quite well. What was a bit of a hassle and difficult was to actually locate them from a particular town. There's no specific technical way of doing that. So as soon as I found a Danish person updating to Facebook in Paris, I had to go to that person's profile and see whether they were public about where they lived. And most people, I was able to see either where they lived or where they worked. But there was a handful of really nice updates from Danes in Paris, where I was not able to say from which particular region in Denmark they were from. So this was just to give you sort of a real life example of how we use these techniques. All right, let's move on. Moving over to, I don't know if I have that much more to add about this setting. Maybe one more thing I would like to share with you. If you search the word, let's just take the word again, elektroauto. I find that it's, with the new language setting here, it's also sometimes can be quite nice to be able to go over to this tab, the More tab, and search for groups about a particular subject. You can see here, if you are looking for sources and voices, then with the new setting, it's rather easy to search groups. And there's a group here, a public group, Diskussionsgruppe auf Deutsch rund das Elektroauto, if I'm pronouncing that right. And I can go into the group and I can hit members. And as a journalist now, I can scroll through almost 500 people who haven't stated their interest in this subject. And some of them are owners of Elektroautos, and some of them work for companies that are somehow related to Elektroautos. So it could be a shortcut to finding sources with this new setting in Facebook. So with that said, we'll head on over to Twitter and look at how things looked Saturday morning. For me, Twitter was, as I said, Twitter is a really nice tool to be able to search on, because I can, and I'll share this recipe with you. What we can do is Twitter, we can find any location on the globe, for instance, Paris on Google Maps, and I can right-click sort of around here in the center of Paris, like this, right-click with the mouse. And there is a menu point called What is Here? And if I click that, and this recipe of how to do this is in the course notes. So rest assured you can replicate that afterwards. So if I click What is Here? I'm able to copy the latitude and longitude of this particular spot on Earth. And I can copy that and go back to Twitter. Here we go. And do a search that will have to start with the word geocode. Geocode, and then a colon, and the latitude, longitude. No space allowed here. And then I have to put in a radius, let's say 35 kilometers. And then hit search. So what this will give me now is a live feed of tweets from people who have activated their geolocation on their Twitter account. And this is less than half of all Twitter users. So bear in mind, you will not see all tweets from Paris with a 35-kilometer radius, but you will only see tweets from people and accounts that will have the location activated. Less than half, I think. We don't have any sure numbers of what percentage of people actually activate their geolocation. As a journalist, I think you should be able to make a conscious choice whether or not, when you tweet, you would like to be visible on a map or not visible on a map. Sometimes it's an advantage that you are visible and people can see your voice. And sometimes you're doing stuff where it's not relevant for people to see where you actually are. Maybe you're visiting a source that would like you not to disclose who that person is or where that person lives. So in that situation, it would be very unwise to also tweet with the location. Anyway, as you can see, results are really flowing in, and it will be on all kinds of subjects. But a lot of this actually deals with the Paris attacks, but we are now only seeing tweets from Paris here. And I can also, I can refine the search with a search word. I can actually go in and say, show me only geolocated tweets, including the hashtag Paris attacks. So now I get a stream of content only with the hashtag Paris attacks and only from Paris. And we could do the same thing with your town. About Germany. Again here, what is here? Latitude, longitude. Here we go. Go back to Twitter. And I'll just substitute the Paris latitude, longitude with the Stuttgart latitude, longitude. The other day I was doing a project where we were monitoring the Greek island of Lesbos. Let's lower the radius to maybe 20 kilometers radius, like that. And still with the Paris hashtag search. So now we get content from the geographical region of Stuttgart with the hashtag Paris attacks. And obviously you can use the geolocated search on Twitter for many kinds of subjects. If you're covering a conference or covering a news event that's very regional or local, you can set up some monitoring of your Twitter stream around that. Oh, that was you, Elizabeth. So you are in Stuttgart and you are using the hashtag and you have switched on the geolocating tag, so people are actually able to hear your voice and find you also with this kind of search. So that's quite a neat thing. And for me, Saturday morning, when I was helping these media companies, this was my first move to do a geolocated search in Twitter. And I also inserted a filter, I'll show you in a little while, a Danish language filter in my search. You could do the same. You can filter for German language. And then you get a stream of content. Actually, why don't we just do it? And I'll show you how that would look. Let's just go back to Paris and also put in a filter here. It looks like this. This will also be in my course notes. I hope you are able to actually see what I'm writing. I've enlarged my screen a bit. So with the German language code LANG:DE, we should now be able to filter in Paris people tweeting in German with the hashtag Paris attacks from Paris. So these are people who are actually in Paris at the moment. So we would be able to gather that and maybe contact them. For me, it didn't really work out Saturday morning. And that's also, I think, an important point for you, because there are not that many regular Danish people using Twitter. Facebook is really the social media of choice in Denmark. I don't know how it looks in Germany, but there are many Danish people maybe on vacation in Paris. They would never say anything on Twitter because they maybe even don't know how to use it. So for me, my searches Saturday morning, real time in the digital space on Twitter was really not working out. I only found one person tweeting in Danish with the location tweets turned on during the whole of Saturday. So that wasn't actually very important. And that also tells us that we should, in each case, in each instance, we should evaluate what kind of social media platform for this particular story, for this particular event or audience, what kind of social media platform is actually working out for us. So looking at a couple of more things from Twitter. Let me just keep track of my notes here. GeoSearch, subjects. Yes, let's move on over to subjects. So I'll share my screen again and show you some more tips and tricks in terms of how to actually search the digital space on Twitter. Just one last thing here. It might be interesting to see, you know, all these terrible stories that we get from the Greek island of Lesbos, where all the, what's the word in German? Flüchtlinge, refugees are coming in here from Turkey. Again here, you would be able to, going to Google Maps, press what is here, copy latitude, longitude on Lesbos, and you would be able to set up a stream monitoring real-time social media sharing on Twitter in terms of what's happening with the refugees that are pouring into this island here. So for other kinds of uses on Twitter, let's say, let's stick with the subject. And the reason why I picked this subject, and I had to look at the German word up, Elektroauto, and I hope I picked the most common word for cars running on batteries. The reason why I'm choosing this word is that I had some students recently who did a fairly large project about electric cars in Denmark. People had talked for years about electrical cars in Denmark, and still the number of electrical cars in Denmark is very low, and they did a project trying to find out why this was. And they also actually used social media. So this was what came to mind when I had to prepare for this session. So this is why I use it, but you can substitute the word electroauto with any kind of journalistic project that you might be working on. I'll just show you now the techniques of doing research in the social space. So for me, what I would normally do, I would try and search for relevant voices, relevant profiles, people who know a lot about electroautos and who share their knowledge, maybe even daily, about what's going on in this sphere. That would be an important voice for me to find. I would also maybe be looking for people who own electrical cars. And I would maybe use also Facebook for that, as I showed you beforehand. And also what I would specifically be looking for in Twitter is widely used hashtags that people who are discussing electroauto would be using on Twitter. And I'll just return to why this is important for me. But now first I'll show you the method of doing research that I have come to really appreciate this way of working. So I go to Twitter and I search just broadly on a nice word covering my subject, not searching for hashtags or guessing for hashtags, because what I'm into now is I'm looking for interesting voices and I'm looking for hashtags that people are using covering this subject. And for that, I have also opened up a document and I'm ready to take some notes. So I'll go back to Twitter and I'll look for hashtags that people who are mentioning the word electroauto are actually using. Well, Volkswagen, kind of obvious. That's a big thing at the moment, huh? Embarrassing for Volkswagen. But anyway, here's a nice post here with a couple of hashtags that I will note. There's actually then a hashtag called electroauto. So I'll note that. Electroauto. And I'll look for some more. FC St. Pauli, well, that maybe not so relevant. And Renault and electric car, that's maybe the English hashtags. I'm looking for German hashtags here. So I won't be noting that. There's electroauto again. Let's just look for some more. This one here called Sonnetanken. That's nice. E-mobility also, which I think is maybe an English word for electrical cars. Let's just note it down. E-mobility and Sonnetanken. I don't know whether this is widespread, but we'll find out in a minute. Let's just look for a couple more. Elektroauto, Bundesregierung, E-Mobilität. So let's just note that as well. E-Mobilität. And find one or two more. Elektroauto. Looks as if that's widely used. There's one called just auto. I'll note that as well. Last evening, as I was checking this out, I saw a couple of people discussing electroauto subjects who also included the hashtag, there's Elektrofahrzeuge und Auto. There was also a couple of people last night who included the hashtag Umwelt and hashtag Auto, we should note that. So with a handful of hashtags, I'll my normal way of doing things, I will then head on over to a tool called Topsy and press the tab Social Analytics. And Topsy Social Analytics allows me to measure the strength of a hashtag. And this can be really important for us as journalists and communicators to know what hashtags to use. So let's just test for the strength of hashtag Elektroauto. And let's also test for the strength of hashtag, what what's it? Let's just consult my notes. E-mobility, Sonnetanken und E-Mobilität und Umwelt. Okay, so let's just try and test out Sonnetanken. That's neat. And let's try for hashtag auto, like that. So, didn't really take that last one, did it? Search. There was a fault here. Let's try one more time. So what Topsy gives me, Topsy gives me a breakdown of, during the past month, the number of times a particular hashtag has been used. And as you can see here, hashtag auto is huge. And I don't know whether it's just in Germany, it's probably also in other languages. So that has been used almost 200,000 times. So let's just check for one of the other ones, e-mobilität, like that. And you can see hashtag Sonnetanken has only been used 19 times and hashtag e-mobilität 71 times from the 18th of October to the 17th today of November. And hashtag Elektroauto has been used 793 times. So that's a fairly nice hashtag to actually know. So this is important knowledge for us. If we are actually going to follow the discussion around the subject, we should follow that hashtag Elektroauto. And also if we have some contributions ourselves, maybe we have some articles or a podcast or some videos or some photos or whatever kind of contents or blog or our projects in general. And if we use Twitter, we should be sure to include hashtag Elektroauto because this is apparently a hashtag that is important. Also, I think actually hashtag Umwelt is quite important. Let's just measure that as well. So hashtag Umwelt in German, I would guess is probably fairly big. 2,616 instances of hashtag Umwelt being used in Germany for the past month. So you see, measuring the strength of a hashtag, and I don't know whether I can see your hands, but if I would actually like to ask you, how many of you do not regularly use Twitter? And this is true for many journalists in Denmark. Most journalists in Denmark actually don't use Twitter. I don't know how the situation in Germany, but for you guys, how many of you regularly use Twitter? Let me see some hands. Okay. So
how many? So we have one hand, two hands.
So two regular Twitter.
Interesting. Right. So we have two, yeah.
Two. Okay, but this is, I mean, this is very similar. It is, but maybe you can mute the microphone again. This is very similar to the situation in Denmark with our students. Most people use Facebook, and I probably don't have to ask you, and I would guess most of you also use Facebook or Snapchat or WhatsApp or some of these other tools. So for people who are not that used to using Twitter, all this talk about hashtags can be, let me just hang on a second. I'll be with you in a second. Let me just draw something here on the blackboard. So at one time, this is me. And a couple of years back, I had 52 users on my Twitter account. And if I send out a tweet, 140 characters, I had a potential audience of 52. And maybe only 20 of them actually saw my tweet because they were maybe not using Twitter that day, and my tweet just sort of drowned. So let's say my tweet was about electrical cars, and it was in German, and I wanted more people to see my tweet. When just by including hashtag Umwelt like that, you would probably have, and I'm just guessing here, I don't know the exact number, but I'm just sort of making my point here. You would probably have around 2,000 people, or maybe 5,000 people, I don't know, regularly looking at hashtag Umwelt, because a hashtag is really only a search, and you can monitor a hashtag if you're interested in a certain topic, like Paris attacks or Umwelt or wine brewing or Bob Dylan or whatever. There is a hashtag for nearly everything in this world. So by including this hashtag in my tweet, Christian here from maybe 4 years back with an audience of only 20, just by including this hashtag in my tweet, I instantly gain a potential audience of 2,000 people. So this is why hashtags are extremely important for you to be aware of. And we are also actually expecting now to see the use of hashtags grow significantly in Facebook now that they have opened up for true real-time search for anything that people say in public on Facebook. Now, actually, when you use a hashtag on Facebook and use this new kind of search, you will actually get everything that is being said. So we expect to see the use of hashtags grow on Facebook as well. And the importance of knowing the dynamics of hashtags will also be something that is quite important. So this is why using Twitter and doing research in Twitter's part of the social web, finding the strong hashtag with a tool like Topsy is actually very important. So one last thing, one last tool to share with you. It's a tool called FollowerWonk. It's also noted in the course notes. If you're looking for sources, people to interview, people to learn from or listen to, then FollowerWonk is a really nice tool, because FollowerWonk lets you search Twitter bios. On Twitter, when people have a profile on Twitter, I'll just show you my profile. We get 160 characters to describe who we are and what we are interested in. And as you will note, I specifically in my profile say here what I'm tweeting about and what I'm interested in. I'm interested in social media and journalism and transforming media and tech. And many people actually state in their profiles what they're interested in. So let's say that you were actually doing a subject about electroautos, why it's a huge success or why it's a huge failure or whatever the subject might be. Then go to FollowerWonk and search globally Twitter bios for people stating an interest in the word electroauto. And you can again substitute this subject with any kind of subject. And you have the option to either search in broad what they are talking about, or just search their specific bios, as I just told you. And I'm really looking now for people who explicitly have told and stated to the world that they are interested in this subject. So I'll search for that, and FollowerWonk will throw up a nice list, and I can even sort it in social authority. How many followers do they have, and do people actually listen to them? So this throws up a list of potential sources for you in your projects. Daniel B. is the first one here, Energieblogger. Zukunft, Mobilität, Saving Vault, Thomas Igler, Mein Elektroauto, media companies, lobbyists, politicians, interest groups, all kinds of profiles. So for me, this is a really, it has become a shortcut to finding interesting sources in journalism. Even though you are not used to using Twitter, this is, I hope you can see, a very relevant way of doing research. So let's move on from these research methods. There's just one actually I also wanted to share with you. researching Instagram as well. There's a nice tool called Webster. It's also noted in the course notes. Or is it? I think I actually forgot to note Webster. I'll just quickly throw it in. Where did it go? Here we go. Just quickly throw it into the course notes. Here we go. Searching Instagram. Like that. So Webster lets you search, if you log in with your Instagram account, it lets you search, maybe even, let's use the same word here, electroauto. You'll get tired of this subject, I know. But see what you get here. Webster throws up a search during the whole, through the whole of Instagram of people actually sharing photos with this and also other words, other versions of the words. So if I click here, you can see that there is 1,813 pictures on Instagram covering this particular subject. And I would really urge you, also when in January, when we're doing the mood court project, try and do some mapping in social media. Who talks about mood courts? And are there even people talking about mood courts in Instagram? Use a tool like Webster to actually do some mapping on Instagram as well. That's a handy tool as well. Otherwise, what I wanted to share with you was some techniques of using Facebook and Twitter to consistently monitor subjects, either because it's in the news or because it's something that you work with during some weeks or you have a general interest in, or trying to build up some really deep knowledge within a subject. To be able to follow stuff systematically on social media, we have a range of tools available to us. One really nice way of doing it on Facebook is to build lists. I'll show you how to do it. There's a URL that I've included in the course notes. If you go to facebook.com/@list, you will see a page similar to this one, where you can search for, I wouldn't guess that there are, actually, there are lists called electroautos. So what are lists? I'll just quickly show you one of my own lists first. We'll get back to this page here. I've put together a list of museums that have Facebook pages on Facebook. This was something that I had to do because I did a project, a social media project with a big Danish museum. So I needed to do some research of how do museums use Facebook. So I included 30 international museums, their Facebook pages on this list. On a Facebook list, you can include either Facebook pages, or you can include your friends, or you can include people that you follow. So let's say you follow maybe 10 really important voices within journalism, like your Professor Elizabeth, or like me, or like even bigger names out there who are sharing stuff about what is happening to journalism these years. You can also, instead of being friends with these voices, you can follow them. And as I said, you can put together a list of people you follow. But specifically what I would like to show to you is the advantage of finding Facebook pages that are relevant to your subject and then putting them on a list, because this allows you to gain two advantages. One advantage is that you can see in the list a stream of the complete contents that they are publishing on their pages. And you don't have to like the pages. So let's say this is something that you work with professionally, and you don't actually want to confuse your private news feed with all this content that you work with professionally. So putting stuff on a list frees you up in terms of not having to also like it and get it into your own news feed. And it also bypasses the Facebook algorithm. normally when you like, let's say I like the Facebook page of British Museum, I will only on average see about 30 or 40% of the content that British Museum, or maybe even lower, that they are sharing on their Facebook page. So for us journalists, monitoring a certain subject, putting it on a list is very valuable because we will see everything. The algorithm doesn't sort anything out. So Facebook lists can be quite handy. You can put in the subject of electroautos, you could put, maybe you would find 10 pages of interest groups and companies and lobbyists that have Facebook pages and are really sharing important knowledge about electroautos in Germany. You could put them all on a list. Or it could be maybe 30 regional politicians also using Facebook. If they do that, put them on a list and you can monitor them. So that's one really nice tool. And the way to do it is something we almost don't have to look at because it's fairly simple. You basically go to this page, add list, or you scroll down and click your menu point Interessen. And in both instances, you will see this button, create list. I don't know what it would be in German, but you can maybe imagine what it would be. And then in this dialog box, I am now able to search for pages. This can be difficult sometimes because you need to know the name of the page. Let's say we wanted to put together a list of German media companies. So I just know the big ones. So let's say we wanted to include Die Zeit on a list. Here it shows up. I click and it shows up like a blue marking here. And let's say we also wanted to include Süddeutsche Zeitung. As soon as I start typing here, it throws up some suggestions and the right one already is here. So I can maybe go for, what should we take? I only know the big ones, Frankfurter Allgemeine. Frankfurter Allgemeine. Here we go, Fastnet. And let's just take one more. Maybe Der Spiegel. Here we go. So now we have selected 4. We can see over here selected 4. We can go on and build a really nice list of German media on Facebook. And I hit next and I'll give it a name in Danish because it's mine. Tyske Medier. And I can choose whether it should be public. Should I be able to distribute this list amongst my friends and also people who are not my friends? Or is it only visible for me as a tool? I'll just make it public, why not? And I'll say done. And what this will get me now is a really nice list of so far only 4 German media. And you can see here that Facebook now actually suggests to me, yeah, and I'll include Spiegel Online and Zeit. And I can refine my list at a later stage, but what I'll get here is I'll get media content. And when I go to my list of lists, clicking interests and find the list here, German media, Tyske Medier, and click the little wheel here, I can add it to favorites and it quickly jumps over here to my favorites and I can rearrange my favorites and move this new and very important list for Christian up in 3rd space in my favorites on Facebook. And now when I look at my mobile phone on Facebook and go to my Facebook app, my handy list of German media will be accessible, very easily accessible on the mobile phone as well. So lists on Facebook is a really great tool of following something on Facebook also. So that's a great way of actually monitoring social media. So another tool that I would like to share with you is the ability on Twitter to create lists. And lists are a really invaluable tool. Let's say that we go to, let's see how to do this best. Let's go to follower one again. I'll show you how it works. Let's say we want to search some bios again. We'll want to search some Twitter bars only. Electro Auto, let's stick with the topic. And we get some profiles. While we wait, I'll just get some coffee. I don't know why it's taking so long. And I'll sort it in Social Authority. And I don't know why it's so slow right now. Here we go. And let's just start opening up some Twitter profiles here. Daniel, the Energiblogger, the news outlet, another news outlet, and this one, and this one. So what I would do is I'd look at, I'm just opening them in other tabs. So Daniel here, I'll go to his profile on Twitter, hit the little wheel here, and hit this one here, add or remove from lists, and I'll create a new list called Electro Auto. And I'll make it a private list because this is just a test, and I'll save it. And I will now include the Energiblogger on my Electro Auto list and shut that tab down. So I'll go to Zukunft-Mobilität and also on their Twitter profile, hit the little gear wheel, add or remove from list, put them on my list, and so on and so forth. Let's just take one more. Put them on the list as well. Add or remove from lists, like that and like that. And we'll shut them down here. So now when I go to my own Twitter profile, and you can even see it here, my lists. I have 16 lists, and the latest list is my new list here called Electro Auto. A really nice thing about Twitter is that on my profile, I get a menu point as soon as I start building lists. On my profile, Twitter creates a menu item called lists. So I can see my own lists, and you as maybe a potential audience can go to my profile and see what lists have Christian created. So in Facebook, when you create a list, it doesn't show up anywhere. You are the only person who knows how to find the list. So it can be you have to manually share the list with your friends if other people should benefit from it. Or people, because of you making it a public list and giving it a nice name, people would be able to actually find it on the page called Add Lists by searching for a list about Electro Autos. That's another way of finding lists on Facebook. But I really would wish that they would include a menu point on Facebook called lists, but odds are that they probably won't. Mark Zuckerberg famously said that nobody wants to make lists on Facebook. And I would add that as professionals, we actually do like to make lists. Anyway, visiting the new list called Electro Auto, what a list on Twitter gives you is a constant stream of content from the profiles that you include on the list. And it can be an extremely powerful news tool if you do some research and you gather some truly great sources in social media and you put them on a Twitter list. You can access that as a wealth of information and something that is worthwhile for you to follow while you are covering a subject or while you are educating yourself in an area that you need to know more about. So lists are a great tool. So the last tool that I would share with you today here, we have 4 minutes left, is a really handy tool called TweetDeck. It's the most popular tool around the world to monitor Twitter. You can only, unfortunately, monitor Twitter. You can't monitor Instagram and Facebook. There is another tool called Hootsuite, and I'll show you in our next webinar. But for now, let's just stick with TweetDeck. because I think as journalists, you should know how to put together a nice dashboard and TweetDeck. It's a free tool. Just Google the word TweetDeck and sign in with a Twitter account. And I'll just get rid of these columns here. It basically works like sort of a dashboard tool, or maybe I'll share some of them with you. Remove this one. Each column here is a search. And if I do a search on hashtag electroauto, TweetDeck throws up a suggestion of or a possibility of me adding a new column. And if I say yes, add column, in my dashboard, my TweetDeck dashboard, I now have a sort of a constant monitoring of the discussion around hashtag electroauto in German. And in this, I just left this because this was from a demonstration a couple of weeks ago. This is actually a geocoded search on the word refugees with the language code English on the Greek island of Lesbos. So this lets me monitor a stream of tweets from Lesbos. And I mean, the possibilities here are endless. You can use TweetDeck for work, or you can use TweetDeck to follow maybe musicians or personal interests that you have. If you do some mapping and find the right hashtags, it's a really, really nice way of, in a systematic manner, following a particular subject folding. And let's just, for illustration's sake, follow one of the world's current most widely used hashtags. And in TweetDeck, you will probably be able to follow the hashtag Paris attacks, but the amount of content streaming in, I hope you are able to follow here, is just huge. We are probably talking hundreds of tweets per second. So you will see this column here refreshing all the time. And for that, you would have to go in and use the really nice filtering options. You see the stream starts running now here, and it becomes too much. So you can go in, for instance, and filter on content, and you can filter on German language, like that. And you can also filter on engagement. Let's say we would like to see only content here that has received a minimum of 2 retweets, like that. So now you have a much slower pace, and it's in German, and it's content that has been retweeted a minimum of 2 times. Let's just make one more before we stop. And that's another column of Paris attacks. But this one, we will filter on users, and we will only see content from verified users, and we will only see content in German. So this will give you a really nice, I would guess, stream of Germans from only verified Twitter accounts discussing Paris attacks. So, and verified accounts would typically also include media accounts and individual journalists. So this will probably give you a qualified stream that would be interesting for you to follow the latest developments within this particular story. So I hope, wrapping up, I hope for you that this has been a session sort of opening, oh, my Blackboard has gone, but opening up this area of this digital space for you as journalists. There are a lot of tools, I've only actually showed you some of them, that enables us to decipher and filter all the, some call it noise in social media, and make it work in our service. So I think wrapping up, that's more or less it. Did the connection work out?
yeah, it worked perfectly. And thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. And I think we learned a lot. Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to our next webinar, and as I said, also to seeing you in January. Have a nice day all.
Same.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.